Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing here with my immediate reaction to the highly anticipated total unification bout between junior middleweight champions Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano. And before we get started here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the fight itself, a very thrilling encounter to say the least, so please be sure to drop those thoughts down in the comments below. In a fight that was nip and tuck for the first 4 rounds, with both men stunning the other and both sides needing to make adjustments, you had the middle frames that seemed to be taken over by Castano. However, as he seemed to be building momentum, that kind of shifted dramatically in the 10th frame when Charlo landed a left hand that really rocked Castano, who was barely able to survive on his feet in that 10th frame. A big left hand hurt Castano, and he, again, managed to stay on his feet, but he was reeling, and it led to a very entertaining 11th and 12th frame that saw action go back and forth, but ultimately seemed to favor Charlo a little bit more, who seemed to have a little more mustard on his shots by that point in the fight. Castano wasn't necessarily throwing arm punches, but he certainly had some of the steam zapped out of his shots, and while he was still landing some shots, the more telling blows seemed to come from the American. Ultimately, after all was said and done in a very thrilling encounter, I had Brian Castano up 115-113 in a fight that I even tweeted could have gone either way. A point one way or the other made total sense to me. But no one cares what I think about it. All that matters was the judges. And this is where it gets a little good, bad, and ugly. You had it 114-113 for Castano, reasonable. You had another card, which was for Charlo, which is reasonable that a card was for him, but it was 117-111. A little bit more on that. And then you had the final card, which was 114-114, making it a split draw, which is as ugly as you expect it to be, but it really is a fair result. Let's get into the takeaways here. Of course, yes, a draw is terrible, but it's fair in this fight. Neither man did quite enough of what they want in terms of imposing their style on the fight. Brian Castano is a pressure fighter who likes to, kind of rev that engine in the first, second, and third rounds, get going. By the 10th, 11th, 12th rounds, he's working you from pillar to post, and there's not much you can do, and he's bulldozing at that point. He's really lighting it up, and he's, piling up the points and really kind of cementing his win on the fight. Well, that didn't quite happen. It sort of was happening towards the 6th, the 7th, the 8th round, but he had such a bad 10th round that there was one judge who scored it 10-8. I even, again, tweeted that was something that could have been a possibility because it was a very one-sided frame. Now, there was only one judge who did it, but the point is to suggest here that was a very one-sided frame. And he didn't quite finish as strongly as he expected to. Then you have a situation where you have Charlo who wants to set up those traps, kind of figure you out, break you down, land those big shots, and boom, he can turn the fight at any moment. He'll turn it and end the fight strong with maybe a knockout, or at least, kind of putting you into this defensive shell because of that power. Well, that didn't happen necessarily either. He gave away a lot of rounds. He wasn't just beating you up and trying to, break down your defense. No, he landed some good shots. He hurt him in the 2nd round. Again, hurt him in the 10th round, even worse. But even in the 11th and 12th, Castano was the guy coming forward. He was the one that looked the aggressor, which a lot of times does make a difference. And it ultimately just didn't feel like enough of a Castano or a Charlo fight, which kind of does suggest that if it's a close fight, what do you call that? A draw. Not as pretty a result as we would like. Of course, you're in a total unification fight where all 4 primary belts are on the line. You'd love to see a winner. But the fact of the matter is, this is kind of what you'd expect in a fight where it's difficult to kind of, lay out the exact outcome. Now, Showtime did run a poll where about 3/4 of the audience did suggest that Castano should have won the fight. But you have to also keep in mind that a lot of that is that Charlo is a brash, sometimes aggressive American fighter who does tend to, put himself out there for people to not necessarily want to root for him all the time. And Castano is just in some people's minds, an unheralded fighter who I thought was always going to do better than people thought he would do, but ultimately looks like the perennial underdog. So naturally, when you see a fight that doesn't go the way you expect it to go, you tend to favor the underdog. And I think a lot of that is coming up in that poll result. The truth of the matter is that it was a very close nip and tuck fight that had a lot of ebbs and flows, and while Castano did have maybe more moments, I think it's fairly safe to say that Charlo probably had bigger moments, and that again makes it very hard to split the difference. Now, one thing I will say in terms of the takeaways here is this is kind of a fight where, to me, from this fight, both are going to have brighter futures as a result of taking this kind of fight. And I think that's important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it shows that growth can happen even when you don't get the results you're looking for. It's not as bad as a loss, but both have to suffer with a draw after, 2-3 months of preparation and putting their hard work into it, and yet I think both of their stocks rised. Now, again, for some who may not necessarily have such a proclivity for rooting for Charlo, maybe you want to try and use this to criticize him, but the fact of the matter is he showed resilience, he showed stick-to-itiveness, he showed a great chin, and continued to impose himself on the fighter, or attempt to at least do it, even when the momentum was suggesting that he was out of the fight. For, of course, Castano, this is a world-changing fight for him, probably gives him more recognition and acclaim on a world stage in boxing in a draw than maybe his title-winning performances in the past. So it's definitely a fight where the trajectory of both fighters goes up as a result of them being willing to take this risk. So you got to applaud both men for, again, being willing to take the risk. I'd say the final takeaway, of course, is getting back to that ridiculous 117-111 card by Nelson Vasquez. It's an absolute joke. And it's worthy of a suspension. I'm not one of these people who wants to say, hey, someone makes a mistake on the job, you just instantly fire them or you suspend them. We're talking about people's, jobs, livelihood, careers, professions, whatever it is. It's difficult for me to just say, let's just throw that all away because they got one single thing wrong in a very close fight. But the point is, it was close. Almost anyone with an unbiased set of glasses on can tell you that this was a very close fight. 117-111 means that Castano got credit for effectively nothing. 2-3 rounds, whatever it is, 3 rounds in this case, that's just because anyone, again, being unbiased in this fight, can tell you Castano did more than 3 rounds worth of work. And yes, it is close, but judges are intentionally there to be able to differentiate between these are all close rounds. Great. Split the difference here. And if you're splitting the difference all in that one person's favor that consistently, to me, it shows either incompetence or corruption. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. This was an incompetent performance, and at the very least, in my opinion, worthy of a suspension. Now, for Charlo going forward, I would have to say a couple of things here. His power is real, and he's got a great chin. So that's going to always make him a very exciting, entertaining fighter because he can take a few punches, and he has that power that he carries into those kind of championship rounds, and it's always going to make him exciting, especially when he does have his limits. Because, yes, you can tell he does have a decent chin, but that's because he can get hit with right hands pretty well. And because even though he has a really good left hook, he lost the battle of left hooks sometimes in this fight as well. Makes him for a very good, exciting fighter, of course, but kind of interesting takeaways for him there as well. I would say when he looks back on this fight, he's going to regret the second round especially, and the 10th round to me. I think he went for it a little bit more in the 10th, but ultimately, it's late in the fight. It's going to be difficult to do. In that second round, he had his man, and he kind of just shot his wad a little bit too early and didn't really go for a true sustained finishing attack in that frame, which might have come back to haunt him. At the very least, scoring a knockdown potentially, if not actually finishing the fight earlier by actually attacking him in a more controlled, measured way. In any event, I go now to Castano here, and I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. I think there was a Ring magazine poll where like 19 out of the 20 picked Charlo to win, which, okay, is fine, I suppose, but there were people even saying, like, who's this 20th guy that didn't pick? Castano was not just a betting underdog, that's reasonable. The odds were relatively close. He was just a vastly underrated underdog in this fight, in my opinion. And again, I predicted that he would actually probably lose the fight, but would be up on the cards when he was beginning to lose this fight, kind of the way the fight seemed to track, actually. I did, actually, like I said, scored the fight for him, I should say, by the end of the fight, but it was the point being that the story of the fight kind of followed the themes that I thought this fight might showcase a lot more than other people, and it was just to see someone so criminally underrated, it's good to see that his stock really went up as a result of a very good performance, even if he didn't get the result he was looking for. In any event, let me know what you guys thought of the fight. Who'd you have the fight for? What was your score? Give me a little breakdown. We'd love to hear that down in the comments below. Would you like to see a rematch? I would assume you do, because it was a great fight. So let me tell you how you think, or rather tell me how you think that rematch might go. Would love to hear that down in the comments as well. Be sure to like, follow, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. You can email me at junboxing@gmail.com. And, of course, visit junboxing.com for schedule, results, betting odds, all that good stuff. And, as always, until next time.